This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, good afternoon. This is the December 15th, 2022 meeting of the Ad Hoc Senior Center Feasibility Committee. It is 12:04 and we are being recorded. So we'll call the meeting to order. First thing on the agenda is approval of minutes. Anybody want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, Rini, anybody want a second? We need a second, please. Libby said, okay. All in favor?
Hang on. Can I make a comment about the minutes?
Oh, yes, discussions. Yes, sorry.
I don't have it right in front of me, but I wanted to comment on the report from the Public Safety Complex. I think that it was right after the 11/28 meeting. I just wanted to make sure it says that the RFQ has been reposted. I don't believe it says so.
Okay, just to mention that the RFQ's been reposted.
Yeah, that's what I reported on it. It was right
Okay.
after the meeting. Yeah.
Okay, Audrey, you're good with that to update that?
Yep.
And then you can send it back to me and we can get it posted on.
I think what I had said was there was a longer time frame and the a little bit of relaxing of the, criteria.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Any other discussion before we call a vote? Okay. All in favor, Audrey,
Aye.
Libby,
Aye.
Rini,
Aye.
Ron,
Aye.
Andrew,
Aye.
and Janet, aye. Thank you. Okay, minutes are approved. Moving right along to our action items from the last meeting. So are we all set with the Survey Monkey? Devlin, did it updated for us to be able to distribute? Because I don't think I saw anything after our communication.
Yeah, so I was actually waiting till today to
Okay.
hear back from you guys and see if it worked fine and if it was good
Anything
enough
else
to.
from anybody? Audrey?
Yeah, I had to go through it a couple of times. It's very well done. But wondering if number 3, if a punch list would be easier for us to tally when we're done. Because Joan probably has a list of, these are all the different activities that the current senior center has. And I'm just thinking rather than people writing in.
I don't know if I can see if I can get to number 3.
Yep, right there.
Yeah, I mean, if we could get a list of the current programs that are provided that are most oftenly participated in, that'd be probably a better idea. I just wasn't sure what is currently done, so I kind of left it open-ended.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And just one of the things to keep in mind, and I'm not suggesting we don't do this, is further down, there are a couple of places where similar questions have been asked. I mean, they're forward-looking questions rather than backward-looking questions. So one thought was not to do another tally, but that's fine. If there's a list you can send us, we can do that as well.
Well, whatever the group thinks is best. That was my thing. The only other comment too that I want to quickly throw out there is we're still bouncing back and forth between COA and senior center in some of the verbiage. And I thought we agreed to always go with senior center.
When we refer to the actual physical location, yes.
So just, do a scan for COAs and just replace them, I think.
Anybody else have thoughts on that? Is everybody good with that? So I guess I'd like some feedback from the whole group, though. If we give a list and we forget something, is it harder to tally for at the end of the survey time if it's a fill-in? And maybe it's just a day out of the house or something. So, maybe leaving that without a list is viable, but given we have the list later on, like you said. So any thoughts on that? Anybody have strong, I think it's a good catch on Audrey's part as well. But if David, that was intentional, then
Well, semi-intentional. I mean, it's not a strong conviction. It's just that it's useful to hear people's what they fill in, because they may sort of understand activities differently. They may want to put it in their own terms. It does make it harder to tally, but SurveyMonkey, there is the stuff that's tallied and is quantified. And then there's the sort of anecdotal stuff that gives you a flavor for what people are looking for. So there's no right or wrong. And my guess is no matter what we get, it's not going to be hugely surprising and make a fundamental shift like, oh my gosh, we have to reorganize it. Usually what we'll do in a report, we'll obviously do all the tallies, but we'll sort of take typical comments and quote people, which adds to just the sense that work has been done and we listen. So again, neither right nor wrong. I'm not arguing we should keep it as it is. Happy to change it if you want to do that. And yes, the senior center, sorry, they got missed. We'll follow up on that.
Okay. And anybody else have a feeling one way or the other?
I'm good with either one. Did we lose Andrew?
Yeah, he fell off. Hopefully he'll be falling back in.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, so I'm fine either we move forward. I guess my concern is by the time Joan compiles a list and gets it in, we're going to delay the
Right.
process.
I'd like to just send it out. I think.
Are you okay with that, Audrey, if we do that?
Oh, I'm totally fine. I was
Okay.
just trying to make everybody's job easier because hopefully we'll get 1,000 responses, and that's 1,000 tallies that have to happen if it's just a
Right.
write-in.
Okay, so hopefully we'll get 500 at least. And okay, I'm comfortable with the way it is. If
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's really up to like the data, like going through that, because the way it's set up now, we'd have to go through and read every one. So she is right; it would be easier in the long run. But if you guys don't want to wait, then that's totally fine too.
But we'll definitely change the COA to
Okay.
senior center. I mean, absolutely.
Okay, anything else? So we'll have that then, Devlin, because I know we get much later and we send it out 2 days before everybody's off for a holiday, then we're in trouble. So if we could get it out,
Can we get that out today?
if
I mean, it's ready to go except for the senior center thing.
right. My other question is, can people answer it more than once?
Yes, they can.
Okay, because I know there's sometimes it's set up that you can only, they'll recognize your computer or they'll recognize something. But so somebody could come in and answer it 10 times.
Now,
If they feel that strongly, let them do it. I mean, that's at least halfway my feeling.
Okay, if everybody's good with that.
is there a date? Is there like a please do this by date?
Yeah, I think that we can keep it active until a certain time. So what is
I didn't see that actually on the survey. People may
Right,
want
right.
that, deadline right there in front of them.
Yeah, we
So-
can place it at the beginning of the survey. That was another thing we meant to ask you is there a certain date you guys want to cap this?
yeah, we
data
want to
collection?
kind of encourage people to get on it. Given it's a busy time of year, is 2 weeks a good time frame? Or, I mean, we're going to post it to various places, send out emails. I mean, quite honestly, from a senior center perspective, it may not get out until Monday. Joan leaves at 3 today. It may be a little tough to get an email out before Monday. So that gives us probably realistically, some of us could get it out sooner, but
I'm wondering whether 2 weeks from Monday is like New Year's Eve,
Right.
these 2 weeks are really busy. I'm thinking we should extend it to the first week of January, maybe January 6th. Just so that people, there's a lot going on now.
okay. Will they be lost? Will it get lost between now and
Maybe.
3 weeks?
Well, we could resend it, right? There's no harm in
Sure,
that,
there's no harm in that. Nope.
right?
And you can also extend it. If you've only gotten 87 responses near closing date, then send out, a reminder to do it, but with an extension date. I think I think we've done that. Right, Devlin? That's a pretty easy thing to do.
Yeah. And another thing is they also an option just to provide a QR code. So if you guys would also like to have physical flyers out instead of just email blasts, that's an option too. So.
Yeah.
Comments on that?
Mm.
So they just scan the QR code on it, or they just,
All right. How many of us have actually done that? Ooh,
You have to do it in restaurants during COVID.
awesome.
Easy.
Wow.
In the code. Pop
you're
it to-
surprised the over 70 responded yes, correct?
Well, I haven't. It's
Oh, you
like,
haven't? Okay,
I
okay.
haven't.
Anyway.
So let's talk very quickly about how to distribute. And let's get, if people have various sites or, I mean, for instance, if we posted a flyer at the Congregational Church with a QR code, I mean, that might be effective, but I don't know how many people.
You could do it at Pure Foods. You could do it in town hall. You could, Pure Foods has a bulletin
Yeah.
board. There's a lot of places around town that I think the QR code might be helpful because
Okay.
people might not be on an email list.
Okay. So,
Maybe that can happen middle of next week or something. We could get the Survey Monkey out now.
right. And then we can add the QR code or.
Yeah.
And then we would have to have a flyer with the QR code on it for them to scan. That's somewhat relevant.
Yeah, it could be a really more rudimentary than the workshop flyer we had. It could just be a big QR code and the title and information, the date.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be.
And can you get us something for early next week on that?
Yeah, shouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
And maybe we do something, use very similar flyer, but change the color. So no one thinks, oh, that's left over from 6 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So so places to post the flyer when it comes in so that we're all sharing the distribution. And we can probably post it outside the library,
Library.
town hall, obviously the senior center. Any other
Pure
place?
Foods. Pure Foods.
Yeah, Pure Foods was number one. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Any place else?
Big Y have a bulletin board? I don't think they do.
Mm,
They used to. I don't think they allow any public stuff anymore.
yeah, very, very limited. And then it's frequented by East Hampton. We get a lot of, not that other people don't go to Pure Foods, but
Yeah.
Any place else that we could think of to post it? Other than the hair station?
I was going to say, catch me up.
Okay, yes. So we're going to get just a poster for the Survey Monkey with a QR code on it. And I don't know how many of your clients would scan a QR code to do the survey.
I can always help them
Okay.
if they need it.
Okay. So is that on your checkoff list when you schedule an appointment? Do senior survey?
Must scan.
Anything else? Anybody else have any places to post it?
Maybe on the sandwich board, just directing people out in front of the town hall, just directing people to the survey. I don't know.
And we can,
Good idea. On the webpage.
Like you
to go to so we'll post it on the website.
post it on the sandwich board when people are driving by. So they're aware of the survey. Perhaps I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, yeah.
What about the Lions Club sign and the Mothers Club signs? Could we word something on those that actually direct them as well? Kind of like the sandwich board thing?
Mhm.
Right.
Can you work out something for that, Audrey, and check out with the Mothers Club? And we could just put, please take the senior or the input for this new senior center. What would be the best language that we
Yeah,
get?
it's gonna be really, really short. There's like
Short,
four
yes,
very
yep.
short lines.
Yep.
Maybe Ed could do a phone blast, or how he does the public.
Yeah, I'm not sure they do a code
Announcements.
red with, it's not really a code
it's not.
red. I think they try to avoid anything that's not urgent, but
Right.
anything else? Any other places?
I know I don't personally go to the town dump, but do they have a thing down there? I mean, it seems like a lot of people go.
We could put a couple in each window. I mean, Steve let us do that when we were doing the input session. We put a couple in the window. So as long as it's not anything political,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's allowed to do that. Okay, so can somebody get it to Pure Foods and I can get them to the town dump?
Yeah, I can do that. Sure. Somebody can.
I just want, everybody duplicating their efforts because it's a crazy time of year. And so if somebody could get to the library, we can have Joan, print them out and put them at the town hall and the senior center. Is anybody over by the library at all?
Yeah, I can do that.
Is that Libby? Libby that's leaving town tomorrow morning at 5:30?
Yeah, well, when are these I can do it
Cindy's
Tuesday.
gonna be ready, yeah.
Listen.
Okay, we can get the regular survey out and then have the QR code follow.
Yeah.
Okay. And as far as I'll have Joan send it out to, we have a list of the friends of the Council on Aging we can email it out to. Anybody that has email group lists for Southampton residents, please feel free to get the word out. They may get it more than once. And
So is it going to be the same link or will you email us that the link is now available with the changes?
We'll be sending out a new link. That link was just a draft, just to make sure.
Right. Okay.
I know I'm coming in a little late. Did anybody happen to say like the housing for the elderly and the condos on Pomeroy Meadow? And then there's the condos kind of behind Park and O'Grady's office there.
Mm-hmm. So there, should we, because I'm not sure the QR code would work there, but can it be included as check the town website, townofsouthampton.org, or scan the Q code, sorry. And what else can be on the flyer so we direct the people to various locations? Because there's not going to be a hard copy survey. It's either going to be online or it's got, electronically is the only survey that we're going to have. So any other thoughts?
Well, the flyer will have both the website or the link and the QR code on it, right? So
Yeah,
people could do either or.
So it's townsouthampton.org is our website once we get it up there. And should we wait to, I guess the link can be up there. The QR code can direct us to the link. So we should include the QR code and the link to the website. We can put them on whoever's Facebook page is out there that's Southampton more focused. Do it on a town Facebook page. But we can't just depend on, I'll put it on the Council on Aging Facebook page, the link. But any place we have hard copies, we need to direct people to either the town website or the QR code, right?
Did we come up with a date yet?
Well, is January 6th, is everybody comfortable with that 3-week period? So we can get it out as soon as we get it. It probably will roll out at different times, based on who's sending it out, who's emailing it, when it gets up on the website. But as soon as we have the QR code, we can get that whole thing up on the website.
Okay.
The link plus I guess if the link is once we get the link, we can get that posted on the website. Should we have that in a document to post on the website, not just a link? So if Devlin does just the document talking about the survey, then it would have a QR code plus the link. And then we can post the document. Does that make sense? Anybody have anything to add? So the
I would be
closing
happy
date,
just with the link.
just the link on the website?
That'd be
Okay.
me, but
Okay. Okay, that's fine. Anybody else?
I think if they're on the website, they're already on a computer where they can
Right.
just click the
Yeah,
link.
it's not that we need, if we're going to do one, yeah, as long as it's going to just float on the website for the survey without a document kind of explaining what this link is for.
Well, you could put that verbiage on the intro,
Right. Yeah.
put that same verbiage on and say, click here.
Okay. Anything else before we move on? We're kind of covered. Pure Foods, library, town hall, senior center, care station, the town transfer station. Anything else? Anybody else? Anything else that's frequented? Dreamers? No. All right. We're in good shape then. We'll wait to get Devlin's final draft and then a flyer to go along with it. Audrey, if you can check with the Mothers Club and then we can kind of discuss language, off the.
I'll check with the Lions Club as well because they actually put the sign up, which is great.
I know.
The Mothers Club, I'll have to do it. So
Yes.
I'll have to try to fit that in somewhere.
Okay. So I'm fine if we just do one or the other.
No. Lions Club it is then.
Is everybody else okay with that? I mean,
Yes.
I never know how many people drive by Pomeroy Meadow and never look to read whatever's posted there or whatever. So, hi, Ed. Thank you for joining.
You're welcome. Sorry I'm a little late.
That's okay. Anything else then on the survey? Are we in good shape? Did we miss anything? Nope. Okay, good. So we want to talk about Abacus. We have a few action items. So do you want to talk about the layouts? Do you want to talk about the soil studies? Do you want to, where would you like to go next? You're muted, David.
Yeah, I got that. Maybe let's talk about the non-pictorial stuff first.
Okay.
And should I go through? And I sent some input. I don't know whether it's too late on the public safety building RFQ. Virtually every town we're working on is also doing a public safety complex. So there's a ton of that work being done. But the suggestion from my contact and Janet, you got that, and Ed, I think you got that.
I kind of put it in Ed's hands. Yeah.
Is the fee was too low. So so anyway, I'm going to step out from that, but I said I would get you some feedback from an architect's view and did that.
Yeah, since Ed's on both committees and, I'm sure he will share your feedback with the public safety committee. So.
And isn't a revised RFQ out or I thought it was, and I don't know if
yes, it's currently out and due back January 12th.
Yeah. And I don't know whether the fees changed, and it's not really my business other than we would love to see an architect on board to talk to. So we do have an interest in making sure there's a successful outcome. But okay. So I had is Ron there? Yes. Thank you, Ron. Thank you for your input. Moving on after that, we decided that I think what I heard was Abacus was going to reach out to get more detailed information on the sites on limitations and opportunities to get at least closer to the idea that we have real data. And as I've talked about, real data, I mean, site investigations are expensive, and I don't know that we need to do that at this point. So I reached out to Frank Holmes of Langen Engineering, and I described what we needed. And he said, yeah, absolutely, we can do that. Now, they're based in Boston, and they have other offices. They haven't done a lot of work in Southampton. So they would work off any information that's available and can be provided to them. And he thinks, he would reach out, he would talk to public health, he would talk to people in Southampton, and he'd look at database stuff, and he could give us a report. This would be into January but the reasonable future that would provide us guidance. So, for example, he could look at that letter on contamination, do some investigation, and instead of giving some weaselly, I hate to describe it in those terms, but descriptions that don't particularly help us, translate that information into a helpful way to move forward. Like, the soil is not ideal for septic. However, it should be adequate given the size of the piece of the property, or something like that. Or no, the soil here is very poor, and it might be on Clark Street. It appears that the soil is better. You might move the building up. So we don't know the information we can get because he doesn't know what's available. But I think it would definitely move us forward on the septic issues, whatever kind of ledge issues, on contamination issues, and wetland issues.
Okay, David, can I just interrupt for just 1 second? Because we did, just so the whole committee knows, Ron, myself, Andrew, and Ed had a mini meeting early this week with David to try to get more information on the soil. We had received information from Charlie Kanicki about a report that was done early, was it 2014 or before that?
I think 2013, 14.
Yeah, on the 210 College Highway area, just from a study that was done then. So we want to get that information to Abacus. And I think Andrew, during that meeting, said we need to get an engineer involved. So, I mean, I guess my only concern in what you just said is just to have an engineer call the health department and get the same information you got doesn't seem to be very effective, for just as an example. So I just,
that is a small proportion of what they're going to do.
Okay.
That is, and the point of doing that, I asked him about that, and he said, well, I know what questions to ask. And, we're architects. I sort of know what questions to ask. It might not be useful, but that's a small, the idea is to go way beyond what's been done to date, or get information that maybe we have, but interpret it in a useful way. So, all he's saying is that he's going to get whatever kind of input he can get. So I asked him, I said, are you in any way at a disadvantage compared to a local engineering firm? And he said, yes and no. He said, yes, we don't know the area as well as a local engineering firm. And he said, but the advantage of going with us is we're big, broad-based firms. Most local, regional firms don't have the capabilities we have. And I said, thanks for saying that. I think I'm going to reach out to a local engineering firm and see what they say. And he said, absolutely. Oh, and by the way, he gave us, he said it was $5,000 to $10,000, and that fits pretty well into our fee. So, if I thought you needed $50,000 worth of work, we could not absorb that. But $5,000 to $10,000 is very much kind of what we assumed we would put in, with our fee. I reached out to Heritage, and I have not heard back from them. Kind of the same questions, the same information. So Bruce is hard to get a hold of, I was told of. Bruce is the guy. So as soon as possible, I'm going to talk to them about it. And one thing this committee could say is, well, these guys are working for Abacus. If you pick whom to use, you sign the contract with them and move forward. You don't need to wait for our approval. That's one thing you could say, rely on our judgment, Heritage versus Langen. And I don't think going out to a third or fourth firm is necessarily helpful. It's local, small local versus large, not local.
Okay.
So thoughts on that?
Yeah, I see some hands up. Rini first.
First of all, so Heritage is in a butter to one of the properties. So I think that's just important to put out there. And secondly, I think we have two engineers on the committee. I'm just wondering if they have an opinion about this.
Maybe you want to go first?
I can speak from an architecture perspective. I mean, it's really, as David said, it's really going to come down to who they're working with and the responsiveness of either firm. I mean, engineering, in my opinion, is sort of pretty cut and dry. It is helpful to have somebody who's so close by and has maybe a more intimate knowledge. But I would say that, at least to me, it seems like anything that could be gained from having a more intimate knowledge of the site would also be something that, let's say Langen could find out just by doing a site visit or a survey of their own.
But that would entail someone coming to this. I didn't hear David say anything about them coming to Southampton. Maybe I'm
no. The underlying assumption is no, they wouldn't come because there's nothing to be gained. If you want to go with perk tests, they don't need to see the perk test. They need to see the results. So they didn't think there's anything that would be gained. Photographs, sure. I mean, I've taken a bunch of photographs of the site, so I can pass on that.
Yeah, so I guess that
from Libby
kind of,
and
let me go to Libby and Audrey too. Go ahead, Libby.
Well, I think to get the real data that you need for the actual design, you're going to have to do drilling. Not, perk test for the septic system and then drilling to make sure that there's no rock and to see what the soil conditions are for your foundation design. I don't think you need to do that now. So I do think that an engineering firm could evaluate the type of information that is available and make a judgment, soil survey information or other reports, and do a judgment without doing all of that other work.
Yeah, okay. I agree. And I know that Heritage is extremely overloaded right now.
And I'm not sure that they're the right firm either. They're mostly
right. Agreed.
They're not really a civil firm. I mean, my firm is, but we obviously couldn't do it. Right. There are other firms, but I don't see an issue with using a Boston-based firm for it.
Yep, I would totally agree with that. It's really interpreting the information and putting it into a useful format for our committee.
It's really to get the costs. I mean, you can design anything, but you don't want to put in a septic system that's going to be like outrageously expensive or have your foundation design be, having to, the building's going to float because the water level is so high or something like that,
And the comment was made, engineering is engineering, and we know engineering's a science. At this point, there's as much art as science in this, and a little bit of magic reading between the lines, which is why I thought having a local firm might be useful, but don't have strong feelings about it. And I'm hearing some discomfort maybe with Heritage. And the only reason I went with Heritage is at least they were the most familiar with Southampton from what I heard. Yeah. But I think, Langen does this all the time without owning an adjacent property and having done nearby work. So I'm sort of hearing that that's the direction people like, but don't struggle.
I'm fine with that.
Darcy?
I just wanted to add, so I literally, as I was getting off my work phone and Bruce Coombs did call me and I thought it was the other call, so I answered it. Anyway, he's looking to throw his lot on Clark Street into the mix also. So I was going to bring that up to the board later because I literally just found out about it. But so that would take him out of the mix anyway, as far as anybody to do work.
And I'm not sure where we would stand at adding a property at this point in time to our mix. But and we're not going to decide the final property. We just need to know, like, I forget who just said, what's going to be the cost of putting it in number 1 versus number 2 versus number 3.
Right. And that, right. So just so David knows, the property they're talking about is right adjacent to one of our properties on Clark Street. So the soil conditions are going to probably be very similar there. I don't think there's anything different there.
Although there was the environmental concern on that particular lot, more so than Gilahurst.
Still, yep, that's right.
Yeah, I told him to email me over because he said he has a perk on that lot, and I told him to email over whatever he had, and I would pass it along to the board.
So that's something that company, the engineering company David's talking about, they could use that information.
Yeah. Any perk tests in the vicinity, and it may be, I think one of the reasons they were going to call Department of Health was to see what was on record. That I don't know whether that's for perk tests. I don't know whether that's available online or not. But one of the reasons to call was just to make sure all available information was provided. But anything you can send us, we would pass on.
Would Marmon Keystone have, I mean, how old is that building? Would the town have their septic system information? And also, they probably had to do a boring or two to put in that building. I mean, that might not be on the town records, but a septic system might be. It's right next door to what we're talking about.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far back they go with the town. Do you know that, Ron?
It's possible, but that they may have the information. But a lot of times, what I find is older systems are not usually available. So I don't know.
Okay, we just wanted to get it moving forward. I mean, that's.
Yeah. I mean, I think we have enough data between what Bruce has for his piece, and right next door, Ryan had a recent perk test and soil evaluation done. So that should be enough for that location. I can't see a lot of variation between the two sites.
Did we get the data from Ryan?
Yeah.
Great.
We have it.
So I could tell Langen to go ahead. I'll tell him that there'll be additional information forthcoming, which is whatever you can pass on, and then they'll go to work, and it'll be going to be the beginning of next year. And we'll deal with them contractually. Is everyone okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like everybody's come to an agreement after the discussion with that. That sounds.
Will they be able to communicate with the landowners at all, or?
Interesting question. I mean, what I'm going to tell them is figure out what you need and tell me what you need. If they want to reach out to the landowners, then I will pass that on to the committee and set up that connection. So, I mean, if any perk test, any stuff like that, absolutely, I don't need to ask them. That would be useful. But that'll be one of the first questions I'll ask them is what kind of information, what kind of context would be useful for them moving forward, and I can pass that on.
So, I mean, all the perk tests should be on file at the health department, right? That have been done to date. So
they should be,
yeah. So all of this means don't go to extraordinary efforts. If you have a PDF, send it. It's likely that would be unearthed anyway. So I don't know. But some of it, if there is anything that might not be available and might be useful, that would help. Okay, we'll move forward with that. And then the trickiest one is probably 210. I mean, we're sort of thinking Clark is no big obstacles. 210 will be the biggest challenge, I think, because there are multiple obstacles, but we'll see where we can get with that. And again, a question to keep in mind is it'll be a little while before we get whatever data on 210. How much of a nuisance is it to get whatever benefits are perceived to be there? And
Audrey?
So just curious, Rini, why is the safety complex not considering 210?
They are.
Oh, they are. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's still, I think we pretty much share all the same sites, except I think they're technically on the RFQ is still the highway garage, and we talked about whether to remove that last time, but it would have required the select board meet again and take it off the list from the RFQ, and we decided not to do that. We were anxious to get it back up again. So for all intents and purposes, it's still on there, but I don't think it's high on the list. So Ed, the sites there are also College Highway, Labrie, Marmon Keystone, Healaher, Highway Garage, and 210.
Okay, thank you.
what we found is if there's a site that's a challenge for a senior center or a community center, it's impossible for a public safety. Much harder to deal with grade changes. The lot's too small. So you're going to hire an architect, but my guess is the first thing they're going to do is they're going to say 210's impossible.
Yeah.
But
Well, like I said, right now, that's our only town property on the list. Well, technically, the police station is too, so we just have to show data so that people understand why it was removed.
yeah, and when you have an architect for public safety, you can ask them to do that for 210.
Yeah.
And we will do, obviously for you, do an investigation. If we advise against 210, we'll let you know why, and we can have a discussion. I mean, I don't think we're there yet, but we certainly have concerns about ultimate viability, and we'll get more data. We'll get whatever we can.
Okay. So you want to, if this discussion is good, you want to move to some of the layout pictures, David, or?
And do we have to approve the engineer at this point, or is that still just?
Well, I mean, we hired Abacus and Abacus is hiring them. So I don't know that, you know, as long as he's upfront with us, I mean, I'll defer to Ed. Do we need to take a motion to do that, or was that in their contract with Abacus to do? I know, Ed, you're muted again. Sorry.
That's in their contract.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we should be.
And again, there's a kind of line there. If it costs $50,000, I would kind of say, well, it isn't really in our contract, but we're not having that discussion because we're saying, yep, we'll get what we think is needed within our contract.
This step is within the contract, so we should be good at this point. Okay.
Yeah, so definitely, can you do screen share? So what we did, I don't know who's seen it and who didn't. I think we got the sense that 15,000 square foot building was kind of the right idea in kind of accommodating the program, except, whoa, it's getting pretty big. So we reduced it down to 12,000 and some square feet. And this is a conceptual plan to the extent that there's no site.
Yeah, David, as soon as you send me something, I get it out to the.
Yeah, okay. So everyone's seen it. We can put it up on the screen. So there we go. There's the building layout, and then we put the sizes of rooms there. And, 15,000, it's probably, you may not need 15,000. And even if you did, you might not be able to afford it. So we said, how painlessly can we reduce that? So if you go on to the next slide. So we've just put everything in a diet. And for example, can you see my cursor?
Yes. Well,
yeah. So we had, like, nobody ever asked for computer workstations.
We can't see your cursor. I'm sorry.
You're gonna have to annotate.
Let me do annotate and all. So we thinned up this area a little bit. So this bar is thinner than it was. We took out the computer work areas that was sort of left over for something else. Another thing we did, and I know you said you wanted both single-use bathrooms and gang bathrooms. More and more and more we're hearing and seeing nobody wants to go into a gang bathroom if they can have individual bathrooms. So we have 4 bathrooms here. We took out the bathrooms here. We have, and think that that's enough. And we haven't checked plumbing code. We could add in another bathroom, but that does reduce square footage. None of this is tied down. All of this is up for negotiation. My sense is, unless there's immediate impact, we're going to hold on until we have like real sites. We made these rooms a little bit smaller. We made everything just a little bit smaller. We reduced the size of this area, but we think it's still, about the right size for what's needed. So, I think we can give you the senior center you want at 12,000 and some square feet, for the discussion to come.
David, can I make a couple comments?
Yep.
So first of all, I feel like every time we visited a senior center, one of their biggest wish they had done is get more storage. So I'm very concerned that their storage that we have in each room is very limited.
Yeah.
So the other thing is that most of rooms like the game room, the arts and crafts, they had sinks for cleaning brushes and doing those things, and adding those in and adding coverage below. You know, I guess I'm just, and I don't know anybody else that went out to visit senior center sites, and maybe it's not necessary right now, but I don't, and maybe it cuts into the room itself, but
there's sinks right here.
Okay.
I drew over them, but yeah, I mean, absolutely. We need, so there are cabinets down below, probably cabinets up above. There's some efficiency. It's backed up to the bathrooms. If you said every multi-purpose room should have a sink, we could do that. At this point, we thought arts and crafts was the main one. And all of these, we could make the storage bigger. We could make the storage deeper. We can add storage here. I think probably, you know, I don't know that we need this all for mechanical. We could all have general storage here. There's great room storage. There's kitchen storage here. There's general storage here. That's not to say your point isn't well taken. So, you know, maybe the thing to do is wait till we get a little realer about this, and then we will weed more storage in.
Janet, are you more concerned about like cabinet storage or more like these grayed out closets kind of spaces?
I'm going to defer to a couple other people that went to visit a lot of senior centers too and see what their comments are. You know, it just seems like, so for instance, in multi-purpose rooms, there were benches to put shoes on and cabinets to store things. And you know, I think it's right. Regardless whether it's, you know, counter height or full storage, I just feel like it's lacking. And I'm learning from the people that we spoke to. Rini, just go ahead and pop in because I don't see.
So just a couple of things. So all those gray areas are storage or closets, but yet they're into the actual social space. So I just wondered, does this mean that the entrance to all the rooms are going to be sort of not level with the social space? So it would almost, because I think that they're going to be more inviting if they're accessible. So if they're so many feet behind, I'm just concerned that it's just not going to be as accessible. People aren't going to be as free to just like check it out. And the other thing is the big thing that's sacrificed is the conference room. And I was just wondering if I could just ask the committee, you know, when we were first talking about this, was it intended to have a large multi-purpose room and a dining room? Obviously, we talked about having an area of fitness where yoga classes and that sort of thing can happen. But I'm just wondering the multi-purpose room, and I get that Joan said last time, it's great to not have to reset up the dining room all the time. But I'm just wondering about the storage space, you know, going into the social space, and also the lack of a conference room. And I do agree. I think we have to come in at 12,000 and the other one was too big. We have to sell this to the public.
Can I make a couple of comments on that?
Yeah.
One is doors. Generally, you want the doors. Wait, hold on. Let me get my. Generally, for egress, you want the doors to swing out, and if the doors are here, they whack into people. So the door assemblies are recessed, so the doors don't hit people. The other thing is you can put a couple of chairs here that are out of the walkway. So we found this is like a front porch. So every room has a kind of front porch. There are windows. If you want to see what's going on, you can stand here and look in the window, and people can walk by. So our sense is, and at a certain point we'll give you 3D views, that that it actually makes it more welcoming than to keep this flat. Okay. You could call it layered space. I mean, Andrew knows what I'm talking about, and maybe nobody does. But let me say also, there are, you know, one of the things is we put storage here. What's quite possible is we should put storage here. You get more you get, you know, open on both sides or one side, and it's a blank wall, and that we don't have storage here. And this is all glass. So having just sort of partially defended this, there are completely different ways of doing storage. And at this point, we haven't given you lots of alternatives. And, you know, just because we're earlier in the process, we want to ballpark certain things. So these are good comments, and I think we probably do want to change this to storage on the blank wall. Here, another question is, where do you want operable walls? Because if you could say, let's open this whole thing up, you can't do that if there's storage here. So if you say, no, we're never going to want a room this big, keep this a solid wall, we put storage there. And some aspects of this are left over from other versions of this, to be continued.
I have a
conference
question. Oh, sorry.
I was just wondering if any comments about a conference room. I mean, I think that staff need that. I think that having it in a multi-purpose room, the acoustics won't be as good. I mean, is there any way to shorten up that room or do something so that without necessarily increasing the square footage? I know that's a whoops.
I think Devlin did that. There was a conference room and that came out, right?
Yes, it came out.
Okay, so that's our mistake. We didn't intend to do that. I think in the reorganization it came out, and where are we going to put it? And probably can fit it in to the offices. So
when you move things around,
we'll weave that back in. That's a good catch.
I wouldn't move the bathroom too far from the wellness room if you're going to do some rearranging over there.
Yeah. And once, so here's a question for you. We reduce square footage, but often there'll be a bathroom off the wellness room that can also be used by staff, and it increases square footage. If we, that's very common and maybe a good thing to do. Maybe this area is too big. Maybe we need to put the open area on a little bit of a diet, and maybe we fit a bathroom here in the conference room over there or something like that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And again, the medical equipment is going to be somewhere that has to be close to the exit, or easily accessible.
Yeah.
To get it outdoors.
And there's the question, does medical equipment open here with you talk to someone in the wellness room and then you check it out there? Does it open this way? So in some of these areas, where are the doors? Which way do they face? Do they face both ways? So we've shown the door to medical equipment opening to the offices and this storage out. Happy to entertain the notion that it should be reversed.
I also know that in a couple places we looked at, the medical equipment storage was actually hanging from a higher level. So you could use the bottom level maybe for storage where that storage room is, and maybe have a way to hang like walkers and maybe not wheelchairs, but up off of the walls. So you're taking advantage of the entire wall. And it was a very creative way to utilize space.
Okay, we would absolutely do that. The crutches, the top of the crutches, the hook can be 3 inches below the ceiling because you can grab the crutch and that leaves room for wheelchairs on ground level. So we don't want to pack it in too tight because if you can't get in the door, but absolutely. And some stuff on shelves. So this could be maxed out. Not just square foot, but every cubic foot can be used. And this may be too small. It doesn't take that much stuff. So maybe this is going back to Joan, and maybe this gray area needs to be a little bit fatter. So I think some of this is the trade-off. How's the flexible office space in the office being used?
There is no flexible space, in our current office. So
yeah, and this is one of many reasons you're building a new senior center. So my sense is we should have an intensive meeting with Joan and whomever else to go over every single detail. But maybe wait until we're putting this. We can look at this on the sites.
I think Darcy's been trying to say something.
My only question was with the office space, do we need 4 dedicated offices? Will we be having, could somebody share an office, obviously, like Joan have her own office, and then like use office space one, maybe for storage for the medical equipment or a bathroom, or, maybe where the medical equipment is now, have that be another bathroom with an entrance into that private area. And then, use that office space for medical equipment. And then down the road, if we needed to have an extra office, you could always change that back. I don't know. For me, looking at it, and I don't work in the senior centers, so I don't know, but it seems like a lot of office space in staff area.
Well, we often hear, and I think this is what Joan was looking for, but one of the regrets we sometimes hear, or what, is we don't have enough private offices because there are confidential conversations going on, whether it's on the phone or having someone come in. My sense is all of those offices are needed, but happy to defer to Joan or anybody else if that's a mistake. But one of her real unhappinesses where she's at is not having that.
Yeah. And I have a question about the exercise room. Is that the fitness room with the fitness equipment? Is that how you're defining it? And
yeah. And maybe we should call this fitness room or something like that. Actually, that was the assumption based on what we heard.
Yeah, if you added actual images of actual sizes of equipment, that actually would help. Like in the other floor plan, you have a pool table in the game room and things like that. And it really helps, because one thing I'm concerned about with the exercise room, well, first of all, the square footage is wrong. It's not 26 by 10. And
whoops.
Yeah, there's a couple of that. So check the floor plans. There's a few of those in both. But should the exercise room be at least as large as the arts and crafts room because of all the equipment? And
go ahead. Sorry.
And like a space like you mentioned earlier, I believe, Janet, to even cubbies to put boots, because you're going to be in the wintertime, they're going to be changing out of boots into sneakers. So we need to have at least enough room for equipment, cubbies, things like that. And so the size of that is, I'm thinking might be a little small.
Well, one of the things we hear and see and actually encourage based on what we've heard is you put a piece of fitness equipment right here. Because there are people who look in and say, I don't want to go in that room. I'm a little bit intimidated or something like that. But for example, a Weinberg House for Two Life Communities used to be Jewish community housing for the elderly. Everywhere you go, there's a piece of exercise equipment. And, they like that. Whether you or Joan like that, I don't know. But that's one of the reasons for having the social space is you can accommodate stuff like that.
That's funny, because I would never get on a treadmill in a social space. Don't catch me dead putting that out there.
Yeah. Well, you can go into the exercise room, but I know because at Two Life Communities, I see people on it and they're having fun and they're talking to their friend and it's less serious. So all I know is in some places and some people actually like that. And maybe this isn't undersized, but that's very much question mark. And again, I apologize for those mistakes. Those shouldn't happen. Thank you for catching that. We need to do an added layer of review and stuff like that.
I just want to comment about the office. I do think we need 4 offices, just thinking about the staffing, projections, not necessarily now, but in the future, in terms of obviously this flexible staff office, sort of area there. I could just see a table that people would share, like the van drivers and such. But I mean, director, possibly assistant director, program director, and either outreach or volunteer coordinator. So I think we do have a future plan, even if it's 10 years out, to need more, to need those 4 offices. I might have the director's office a little bit larger than the other, just so that there could be a table in there for smaller gatherings that are confidential. Usually the director's office a little bit bigger than the others.
Hello.
Those bills. And we can certainly get a group of people together without having a quorum to kind of really go over this with a fine tooth comb and include Joan in that as well. So.
And what the next images you're going to see are exactly this plan dropped onto a real site. So it's more real. And if people say, wow, this is kind of the right idea, I would say, yeah, we just dropped on a generic building onto this site that the next pass at the plans is not a generic plan, that we incorporate all of these questions and comments into something that's on a real site. I mean, should we look at this on a real site and then we can come back to the plans? Because I think this does shed some light on planning questions.
Sure.
Okay. And can we make this a little bit bigger? Yeah. Okay. So we took exactly that plan and dropped it on, and actually it's not so bad. What we said here in the next plan organizes things a little bit differently. Is you come in here, whoops. Yeah, so let's just settle on this. So you come in here, you can do drop off at this door. There's handicap parking here. There's parking here, there's parking here, there are trees, and then here's a road that's completely separate that goes to the back of the property. We don't know whether that's what the landowner wants, but we're sort of testing that out. And then, where the doors are actually kind of makes sense. I mean, if you have your personal house, 3 doors are really great. There's a front door to the street, or there's a back door to the backyard, there's a side door to the garage. We found that senior centers, community centers, 3 doors actually work pretty well. There's a front door here off the parking. There's a door here, and maybe this is a walking trail, and there are doors here, and maybe this is a terrace. So we haven't developed the outside, we're just sort of doing a test fit. The sense was, maybe this plan isn't so bad just as it is, but still needs to be pushed and pulled and massaged and want to get some input. But it seemed to answer the number one question we had, which is, does a plan vaguely like what we're looking at work on 89 Clark Street? And the answer seems to be yes. If septic were way better up here and there was a reason to do that, all of this could move towards the end of the site. So again, there's nothing cast in stone, but so far so good on this being viable.
Does the front of the building have an overhang for like the van to pull up and have people not get wet or?
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay.
And this is what it's like in 3 dimensions, but that's absolutely, this is why the drop off is pretty close to the front door. So, and I'm assuming you asked that question with the idea that's what you'd like, that there's some sort of canopy or overhang.
Yeah.
So David, just 2 points that I want to kind of ask the group about. So David and I sort of talked about, does the senior center need to be as close to the road as long as there's no commercial in front of it, if it can be moved back any if necessary based on soil, and what the group thought. And I don't know who's there's a lot of noise in somebody's background. I don't know who's.
I'm sorry, that's me.
Okay, sorry. And he also, I did reach out to Ryan Gielaher about what size road, what kind of equipment, is there any specifics that you can share with us about your vision of what you feel you need to get to the rear of your property? And unfortunately, I didn't hear back from him before this meeting. So,
yeah, a comment on that, Janet. More than likely, he'll need a separate roadway to the back. Yeah. Considering, the fact that we're going to need to put an easement in the deed for him to have a permanent easement to his own property. So I would make that road totally separate. Maybe along the left-hand side or whatever Ryan wants.
I was very clear that driving your trucks through the parking lot probably was not our vision. So the separate road was definitely my question, how wide that separate road he felt it needed to be. Are his big trucks going back there, or is it?
Janet, I talked to Ryan.
Okay.
And I think what his vision for his property is to eventually put some sort of industrial park back there, or maybe not, but the land behind there is pretty large, and I think that there's probably going to be an end coming off of Route 10 and an out coming off of Clark, possibly. So, so it'd be kind of like an industrial park, and then this would be at the beginning. So
the end.
So yeah, he would need like a 50-foot wide piece of land to get a road through there.
And what we have from the property line is probably about 50 feet. I mean, here's 60 feet. So exactly the configuration, but there's room for that. Yeah. I mean, you would think you'd need a 50-foot road. I mean, a 20-foot, but anyway, there seems to be room.
I think in terms of the setback on the property, I think it's just important to remember in terms of like plowing and maintenance.
Good point. Good point. True.
Well, this is one of several reasons thinking keep it close to the road. I mean, one is visibility. The other is to minimize, and there is a hill, so the amount of plowing and how hard it is to get up. I mean, if there's a lot of traffic going here, I mean, when I've been on that road, I didn't see a single car or truck going by, but that was only 20 or 25 minutes. So the plans for this road and this road, that would be helpful for decision making.
That's David. That's why I thought if the engineers could speak with the different landowners and kind of figure out what their visions are too, then you can kind of tie it all into the concept and then see if it's even going to work.
And we can be in on those discussions. You can include me if you want, whatever's helpful.
Yeah, because my thought would be is if there's possibility of big trucks in this being an industrial park, would it be a good idea to actually have the drive and entrance for the senior center, shall we say, on the opposite side of the property from the drive that would be going into that industrial park, so that the senior traffic driving in and out wouldn't even be anywhere near those big trucks.
So flip-flop the building and the parking lot, Ed, sort of?
Right.
That's sort of the way it is. I mean, the road for the industrial park and the building itself are as far apart as we could possibly get them. And the drive is 150 feet apart. So that's sort of what we've done to try and separate them, with the idea that the building should be even further away from the road than the drive is. But all of this could be flip-flopped as well.
Okay.
I think anything in terms of a terrace or anything outdoors. I mean, I think we heard a lot at the info session about the importance of the outdoor part of the senior center. I think we just have to keep that in mind in terms of noise, in terms of trucks, that wherever there's going to be terrace or outdoor seating or anything like that, that should probably not be where they're going to be potentially large trucks.
Yeah, so the flip-flop might not work for that reason.
Yeah. In this case, we've tried to keep that as far away as possible from the road. It's a narrow piece of property. I mean, you could have a retaining wall here. You could, there are lots of things you could do. I mean, the reality is you can only get so far away.
Mm-hmm.
How much property do they want to retain in the back? I mean, is it half the parcel or?
Not this parcel. It's a parcel behind it.
Behind it is a large area. There's a lot of acreage back there.
Okay, I can't see. Okay.
All right, so it's not
okay, so then it wraps around to Route 10.
Right to Route 10.
So could it just be like emergency access onto Clark Street from?
I think if the engineer and him have a discussion, I think it probably would be good, because then they'll speak the same language because they're both, involved in that kind of work. But again, I don't know if you can just single out one piece of land. I think we're looking at multiple pieces. So I don't know. as far as that goes. But really, I think it would be better just to speak to the owners and see what their intent is.
Yeah, because I think with what Libby's point, not just the senior center, but to have an industrial park emptying out onto Clark Street
Right,
with the sports and all of that would be tough.
And I may be misspeaking. Like I said, it's better if they just have a conversation, because I didn't want to get into too much detail. But that was kind of what he was hinting, is that maybe that's what he wants to do.
I mean, industrial park can be a lot of different things. I mean, and some industrial parks are actually way more like offices than they are.
Right, exactly.
Like a big steel plant.
Yeah, and it's not uncommon to see senior centers and stuff like that in those kind of atmospheres either. I don't think. I mean, a lot of cities and stuff are kind of built around those.
And it's not like there's going to be an oil refinery there.
Right.
And I don't know how much the town can control what's there. It's industrial. You couldn't do an oil refinery there, I would assume. Not that anyone will do that. But Ed, are there limitations?
We have our zoning book that's actually online. I can bring it up and tell you what the uses are for there, I think, without. Hold on, I might have it right in front of me.
While he's doing that, David, how many parking spaces are we allocating?
Wait, Devlin, are there 75 shown there?
75.
Yeah. And there's room for more. You could also do less. You could just do this much, and you can overflow parking on the grass. So it seemed maybe more than you need, but again, to be determined based on the programming.
Let me retract that. It was 75, but since we've rearranged the parking a little bit, it might be plus or minus that. We'll have to double check on these plans, but the last iteration were 75.
Yeah.
Thank you. That might be.
Add that information in front of you.
Plan.
Go ahead, Ron.
Okay. Manufacturings with a special permit, construction, industrial supplies, freight terminals, bus passenger terminals, wholesale trade distribution, research offices, stuff like that. Professional business offices, commercial parking lots, amusement centers. So I don't see any oil refineries here.
Yeah. And I was mostly joking about that, but there are a lot of industrial parks. The only trucks are people's pickup trucks. Right. Because they just happen to have a pickup truck. That there's virtually nothing that requires a semi. Mm-hmm. And I'm just guessing this seems like an unlikely place to have lots of big heavy trucks rolling in and out. I don't know that for a fact, but
right. There's a lot of marijuana use out there too. Permitted.
Are you suggesting people are too stoned to be able to tell?
Yeah.
Or
no, I think that it's.
Yeah, no, I got your point. Yeah.
Yeah, the zoning allows for pretty much growing it, researching it, doing whatever, any of that stuff.
And I wonder whether it's overbuilt because Holyoke has like 1 million square feet.
It's probably getting saturated.
Yeah.
This is the only.
All right, that's all I have.
We have about 45 minutes, David, so we want to keep good conversation. I
really
be cognizant of the time for people.
Yeah, and so let's go to the next one. And this is all we have, this is what we've done. We don't have more than this because I think, we followed up on the stuff we talked about, and then we have questions for you. So this is just a little bit different. This is a narrower site. If you said that this was close to the road, you have a narrow throat, we have parking, a difficulty with parking, and then we have a road here. This is much narrower, may not be wide enough, a disadvantage of wrapping parking around the back is you're kind of cut off from the green space. You know, you could have a terrace here and you could get back there. So there are disadvantages to have it to this location on, I'm trying to erase, on this site. You could locate the building and parking here. And this could be a big front yard and you have a lot more flexibility. You could locate it here. You could have a road here going back and have the senior center here. It pretty much disappears from view. That may be a problem or may not be a problem.
So why do we have the extra road in there? Don't we only need that for 89 Clark Street?
Oh, is that the case? I thought we were talking about that on both of these properties. Am I wrong?
Yes, it's only 89.
Okay. Okay, my mistake.
Requested that.
Okay, so that isn't there. I mean, it's basically the same plan, except you could move it anywhere.
Right. The other thing too is that if we deemed on 89 Clark that we needed more space for the roadway for the owner to get to the back parcel, you could do a layout more similar to this.
With parking in the back instead of.
Right. And that would actually give you more side space so you wouldn't be right up against that easement and his access.
So my only concern about the parking way in the back as well is what David has mentioned is the front entrance and the reception desk is a bit of a walk from there, depending on who's coming to the senior center. Because the front is right, it's up towards the road, the reception area instead of, yes. So
Well,
to park back, it depends on, go ahead.
You could reconfigure the floor plan though to have a different entrance.
Sure.
The main entrance.
Well, you'd want it, as long as you go to the reception. I'm sure we can have a door in the back, but you would want the main entrance to be to gather people's who's entering, scan their card.
Do a mirror image of the entire floor plan.
Yeah. Yep.
And one of the things is, it depends on the client, it depends on the site. We try and keep entries close to roads with the idea that some people can walk, that some people can bike, that not 100% of people drive. If you put the main entrance back here, you're just sort of assuming everybody's going to drive and park. That may be the right assumption or it might not be, but we at least try and make it pedestrian friendly. You're close enough to the center of the town. Maybe people will live here someday, but who knows? Could we backtrack? I didn't quite get the comments about the road. There was a suggestion of something to consider on this that I.
So David, what I was thinking is that this plan, if we needed more space for that access road on 89, you could take this plan and put it on 89 because it's more narrow.
Yeah.
That was really it.
No, I got that. I'm certainly hoping and thinking that we left 50 feet. I mean, one would like to think that they would need more than 50 feet. Right. A 20-foot road should do it, and then you have a buffer on either side. Right. But your general point that the site plan and the building plan all relate to one another and to uses on other part of the properties. It's a good point. We kind of need more information and more input on this. So this is what we have for you. I mean, this is the stuff we talked about last time. We are waiting. I mean, we haven't even started yet alone finished, but we're hoping, let's say within a month, we have really meaningful input on subsurface conditions. We want to hear more from the owners of the properties. We have a lot of really good comments and questions on the floor plans and the site plans. We're holding off on 0 College because we don't know where our site is, and we're holding off on 210 College just to know the site realities. So we want to keep moving forward, but I'm not sure what to do next until we get more information on some or all of these fronts.
That's a great question, because I have the same question. How far do we have to take all of this to be at the goalpost for our feasibility study handoff? How much detail do we really need? Anyone?
I mean, we certainly don't have to have the final, but if we're paying Abacus to do some of this design, I'd like to make sure we get what the RFQ has requested from them. You know, what do we need to get our 2.5 million? That's kind of two different issues, I think, if we can move it along a little further.
And here's the thing. One of the things we could do, and this is convenient timing because the holidays are coming up, is not do too much more. And some of the things we can do, we can start putting together a final report, even though we don't have a final design. There's sort of compilation and formatting stuff we can do. So let's just say a month from now, we have significantly more information. We can just dive back into this and accomplish. I think we, accomplish the goals, which is to have a real plan in place. And we don't want to stop for a month, but there is time to stop for a month, because what we're reluctant to do is lots of planning without more information.
David or Devlin, could you quit sharing for a few minutes so we can see everybody? Okay. Hi, Joan. Thank you for joining. Busy morning, I know. So is there value in the group of having a couple of the landowners come and visit at one of our upcoming meetings?
I think if they're willing to, talk about their plans, that would be great to give us some idea of what the future brings.
I mean, I don't think there's any questions about Marmon Keystone, College Highway, or 210 College Highway, but the 89 and the 0, there's some answers that, do we have Abacus contact them? Do they come to one of our meetings and talk a little bit more of their vision? Just thoughts of the group.
Absolutely. I think it'd be helpful personally to have them come in or go on Zoom.
Separately or together?
Separately, I think.
I think so too.
Yeah, separate.
Or it might be good leverage if we have them come on together.
I would think the board committee could ask them rather than Abacus.
Yeah, no, we would ask them to join us here. Anybody object to that? Okay.
I do believe what David was saying, that it would be nice to get to get moving on. We have a lot of the information, or Abacus already has a lot of the information for the report. If you could, start compiling it. I think the biggest thing is the cost, and that's going to be a lot of the soil stuff. But we have like a building size now, and an idea of the sites and everything isn't nailed down, but you could do a lot of the work in getting a report, which I think we need before that February meeting, don't we? Yeah. So
wait. The February meeting, you're talking about a community meeting, right? Yeah. So that's a question, is what's presented there. I think in some ways the report. So let me. So we're saying we're going to try and get the landowners to a meeting. What would be really helpful is, Joan, you missed a really good discussion. Your name was only mentioned like 20 times. One of the things to do is to do a not public meeting. I mean, not that we don't want it to be public, but to accelerate things. And maybe it's Devlin and I and Joan, and maybe it's one other person. I mean, we're not making decisions, but to really talk in detail, Joan, about what you need and want, and review the plans that we spent some time looking at, but digging in to a lot of the details. Is that something that, I mean, if
one of the chairs was there, because I'm the director, I live out of town. So I think as long as one of the chairs was available, I don't feel like I should be the end all.
No,
Yeah.
we would get another one or two, so we can't have more than 3 committee members. So it's kind of like we just did with Ron for the soil test and kind of that evaluation. We just kind of had a subgroup mini meeting. So there's some of us that worked with Joan from the very beginning on kind of size and shape and what do we need and what don't, and maybe those 3 of us, I don't know if Reni's available if you want to join in on that and whatever that is. But yeah, to have that discussion with Joan and a couple other folks to just, I don't know, Joan, have you had a chance to look at the layouts that were sent?
I did. I have it printed in front of me. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's similar to what you had before, but I think it looks like everything has been included. I do have 2 other centers I want to visit just to see what their layouts are, and I'm going to do that in the next week or 2. So.
Yeah, and if you get a chance, maybe to review the first hour of the meeting, because I think there was a lot of stuff covered that I don't think I can repeat and capture every part of it.
I will try and do that. Yep.
Yeah, when you get this iCloud recording.
And we've taken, so Devlin's taken some notes, and all of the questions you brought up are they're pretty much exactly the same questions that come up with every facility. There's storage, and there's storage. There's offices, how much flexibility, where is appropriate. So we can go through that. So reviewing the recording wouldn't hurt, and then we can just pick up where that left off.
I'm fine to meet Janet.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thanks, Rini. And I know
Thanks, Rini.
Darcy might have been in on it too, so it depends on your schedule too, that we kind of created or maybe not. Were you kind of part of putting the program stuff together?
Yeah, but I mean, if I can make it, I would love to, but this time of year is a little crazy for me. So
Yeah. What may end up coming very early January, we'll have to determine that. So, landowners, so we're going to do landowners at one of the next meetings. Would Ed be the best person to reach out to them, or what would you suggest, Ed? All right.
What's that, Janet?
For the landowners, do you want to reach out to them? Should I reach out to them?
Happy to. I'll be happy to.
Once we get that date, and then we can meet with Joan and Rini, David and Devlin on a little mini meeting about layout and stuff like that.
And that would be 79 Clark, 89 Clark, and 0 College. Is that the idea?
Yeah, I don't know if 79, are there any, I don't know if there's really any questions. I mean, the property is the property. There's no questions on anything other than do we have to buy the whole property would be one question. But it's kind of like we're dealing with a realtor that deals with the parent company. So I don't know that it would, anybody else have thoughts about that? The questions are really from the 89 and the 0 where there's unknowns, but thoughts from the rest of the group?
I think it's more the 0 and the 89 because it's their future plans, which would have an impact of what they want to do with their property. I think the other ones are pretty straightforward.
However, if we present a plan in a public meeting, I feel like all the property owners should at least see it before it goes public. So that doesn't mean they have to attend a meeting. They just need to see what we're thinking,
Yes.
I think.
But I think questions open, for the unanswered questions, I don't think Marmon Keystone necessarily
I agree.
are any unanswered questions before we get to that point.
Yeah.
But
I think it's been a while since we actually walked the property, and I think that they were very responsive once we actually reached out to Coleman Realty. So I don't think it would be a bad idea to just reach out to the properties that are all on the list and just say, here's where we're at. And the only question from Armin, and I think they answered it at the time, but it's not a bad idea to ask again, especially if they have nobody interested in the property, is are you willing to sell that separate from the L in the back? I think my sense is they're getting rid of everything they can and just keeping the land around the building. But it's worth asking them, I think. And I think it's good to just keep in touch because it's already been a couple months.
Okay. So we can definitely have Ed reach out to all 3 and
So do we want to talk about the meeting in February?
Yeah, so two things we still want to cover is that, the meeting in February and a joint meeting with the Public Safety Committee.
Yeah, and I absolutely think that needs to happen before a public meeting.
Yeah, that should come first too.
And they proposed February 9th, just thinking around along the lines of our meetings are usually on the Thursdays around noontime. So I think February 9th is a Thursday around noontime. But I don't think that there's any reason why it can't be before or after that. That was just a proposal at the meeting.
And that would fall into our kind of every other week schedule. Does anybody have a conflict with February 9th? Because as I look at these properties that you just laid out, David and Devlin, that, if we were to say these are two key properties, there's no room for a second complex in those properties when at a glance. So, and they would want to be probably closer to the road versus behind us. So I think it's important to have those conversations sooner than later. So is February 9th soon enough, do you think?
Well, I think it also has to do with the timetable of when we're expecting the what's the deadline on the RFQ for the public safety? Ed, January 12th.
He's talking to himself. I know that.
January 12th is correct.
So I think it was also once they're due, and then we have a certain period of time where there's interviews if necessary. And then I think we have a deadline for selection by the select board of the firm. So we wanted to just before the study got underway, but after we know who's doing it, we wanted to meet with the senior center group.
But it seems like the point would be for the architect to have worked with the committee long enough to understand the options and be able to suggest whether the properties we're looking at would even work for them. And it'll take a little bit of time for them to get to that point, I would think.
No, I think this is really about we're going to the voters. This is about public support, public information. I think, with the public safety group being now a measure behind the senior center, I just think before there's a lot of public discussion, presentation, I think that there just needs to be a coming together and sharing information and talking about not necessarily as much land as just public information and public support. Is that your sense, Ed?
Yes. Oh, God. Here we go again.
What?
Yeah. Yes, it is my sense.
You're good. You're good.
And I think that's great from an architect's point of view. We're always eager to have the architects on board so we can talk really planning. I mean, not detailed planning and design, but again, it's up to you, whatever the schedule is there, whatever information we can get. If you're asking us to advise you, it helps us to be able to talk to them, but we'll work with whatever's available in terms of input.
So Rini, was there recommendation to meet with us as well as Abacus, or just to have a joint meeting internally for Southampton?
That's a good question, Ed. Do you have a sense? And we have a meeting on the 9th of January, so I can clarify all that if we just want to lock into a date, and then we maybe the chairs could, come up with the agenda. But right now, we were more interested in timing it in such a way that we're beyond the point of selecting a firm, but haven't started into the study. And we were very aware of the deadline on the senior center side.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy if they want to submit, a proposed agenda to Andrew and myself, since it's kind of being driven by them. And certainly we want to get on the same page with them.
Yeah.
But if they have something they've kind of penciled out, we can have a meeting between the chairs, if that helps, for an agenda. So, yeah, I'm just wondering if it's really necessary to involve advocates in that meeting at that point in time, since the other architect won't be there and it's more of a,
Probably not.
yeah.
Yeah, if there isn't another architect to talk to, I was thinking maybe there'd be the architect, but if it's policy issues, invite us, don't invite us, whichever.
Okay.
I mean, if the committee, the senior center committee approves of the ongoing PowerPoint that you've been revising at each turn here, then maybe that could be available during the committee meeting to share, because that's, very informative. But I would want that to be based on a vote of this committee to share that at, because eventually it's going to be shared probably at the soon to happen senior center or community wide presentation. So,
and it's shared on every meeting, basically, right? I mean,
yeah, right.
It's posted, it's shared.
Right.
It's not anything that's if our meetings are getting posted on YouTube in a timely fashion, that the information is available to anybody that really wants to see it.
Yeah.
So it's not anything to hide, but I don't think we're ready yet. I think maybe another couple of revisions before we're ready to.
Okay. So can we plan on at least the 9th at either 12 or 12:30?
Anybody have an issue with the 9th at the moment?
No.
Would that be Zoom or in person?
Zoom.
Okay, thank you.
And noon will work. You're not, Ron?
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry. I thought you said something.
No, I'll be around.
Me. I'm not, I won't be in town, but I'll be available for a Zoom meeting.
Okay. And they're good with noon then, Rini. That's not a problem for them.
Yeah, I think they were just trying to jump into the schedule here.
Okay, great. Okay, so that's good. So now we can kind of plan forward to the input session and pick a date, hopefully, for that. David?
And what is the goal of this public meeting from your point of view? I mean, I could say what do we want to give and get?
We want to give as much information to the voters in Southampton to make them comfortable with the process and be as transparent and open to feedback and giving an update. I mean, I it's funny. I look at our community Facebook page, and everybody says, well, we haven't had much discussion about the Greenway, which has been going on forever. So it kind of blows my mind when I read those type of things, but I just want to make sure that I don't hear anything from anybody that we didn't give people an opportunity to understand where we are in the process. That's my opinion. There's other people that probably have other objectives too.
We're just about to close on the right of way for the Greenway in the next couple of weeks. So.
But so the point is, because we sometimes we do community meetings when we really are finalizing a proposal. We've looked at different properties. We think this is the best one. Here's a conceptual layout. We want your input, but we're pretty close to having a conclusion. Sometimes when we do it, where there are options. Here are 3 different sites. We want your input. Sometimes it may be, but this is not very often, where we're kind of in the middle of things. This is what we've done, but we don't have choices for you, but we wanted to update you. And in some ways, that third option is the least satisfying, because why did I come out on a Thursday night? You guys haven't figured things out. So I'm trying to figure out, where we would be for that meeting. Are we going to be able to say we've really zeroed in on this? And I don't know if anybody knows. I mean, probably not.
At least some of the, narrowing it down to a couple of the properties and having them understand why some of the other properties have been eliminated, I think is a critical part at that point in time. Anybody else? I know there's probably 5 or 6 other opinions out there.
I think that's appropriate. I do think we need to present costs, conceptual building costs and parcel acquisition costs. I don't know if we know that.
Well, probably, the sad reality is public construction a couple of years out, total project costs. That includes the owner's project manager, it includes blah, 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 is about $1,000 a square foot. for sort of a typical piece of land. No piece of land that any city or town is going to build on is like easy. So in prices like that, there's a certain amount of difficulty. If there's way more difficulty, you probably don't want to build on that piece of property. So I don't know whether we can get any closer than that. I mean, we can try. And if there are specific site issues, that it's really a little more than that because the only piece of property available is a tough one, then that's fine. And then land acquisition, or you could say, here's building cost, here's land acquisition, and then there's site prep. We got to do some blasting of ledge. We got to do wetland replication. So add $750,000. I mean, I think those are the kinds of numbers we could throw out.
I think we just need that. They're going to ask, how much is this going to cost?
Yeah.
We have to have a ballpark number for each site, and it's got to be.
And we could go to a cost estimator, but I'm not sure they're not going to just move back from, $1,000 a square foot, then construction costs, and then here's how it's allocated, because we're not going to get to the point unless there's something special that we're, mechanical systems meeting contemporary codes, that's $212 a square foot. I mean, I'm making that up, but
yeah. And again, as Audrey mentioned, our goal now is to be able to secure the estate monies that we've been given the opportunity to have. I mean, that is the goal of this feasibility study. There will be additional studies. We're not going to need a vote in March to submit this to the law firm to get $2.5 million. But this is what we need to complete in order to get access to that. So I don't know how we balance those two. I hear what you're saying, because I also think there's going to be some questions from people that say, well, we need a public safety complex first. And that's going to be a challenging question to answer, because I don't want to compete with a public safety complex, because we're going to need both. But, I'm sure you ask a lot of people in town, their priority would be the public safety complex, even though they voted it down a few years ago. So I know anybody else want to weigh in?
Well, I think in addition to that, if we're talking about public meetings, it would be, David, you were asking for next steps. I think it would be helpful to see some 3D imagery, whether that's perspectives, axons, whatever it might be, just to sort of drum up some, I guess, motivating imagery for the public to see, instead of just two-dimensional plans. That way, if you have these sort of like furniture elements in there as three-dimensional figures, then they can really get more of a sense of the space and really what they're getting for what they're voting for. That's just kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah. And we can do some of that. One of the things we sometimes do is use some combinations of photographs. I mean, some of it's how far along with the design. So what we've done, and I can send you some examples of that. We've shown 3D images that isn't exactly this project, but it gives us, Devlin, did we share any of that? I think we did. I can't remember for this. Some 3D imagery that isn't exactly fitted to this project, but is very much the kinds of places it could be created. So, Andrew, I get your point, and we'll think about that, ways to get people excited. And some of this might be planned stuff, but there's axonometric, and like you say, puts in furniture and brings it to life. So without getting too far ahead of ourselves, it's a good idea. We'll follow up on that.
I agree with you. I think for the public meeting, it definitely needs to have like furniture in it. I know with us selling houses, a vacant house, people can't see it. And this is a much larger thing for them to envision.
And I do think when we looked at your responses to the RFQ, some of the things that pulled us in your direction was some of the 3D displays that you talked about. So, I mean, there's maybe an expectation that's been set by Abacus that we
Yeah.
will see that deliverable.
And my question is more for a finished report is a little bit further down the line. And how far are we along when we have the public meeting? But yeah, I mean, I get your point. Let's figure out, no matter where we're at in the process, a way to get people excited, bring it to life. And Devlin, how much can we do? I think we definitely need anything that's wrong, we need to correct. I think maybe we should make a few tweaks in the floor plan, even though it'll continue to change, just to, to have it correspond a little bit more with the program, get that back to you. And maybe we can put together some images. So Devlin, let's you and I talk about how we can move this forward incrementally without, different site plan changes completely, that it's like all for naught. So find a balance between moving forward and not getting ahead of ourselves. We don't like sitting on our hands.
I think that the presentation in February should be almost complete so that the community feels like they're tweaking it, like they're saying, well, you planned this, but they're putting their input and saying, well, why did you decide this? Would this be better? I mean, I think if you present something that's 3/4 done and then you have the input from the community to finish it off, not that they're professionals, but they live in this community. So maybe they have some feelings about different things.
What we usually try and do is you kind of inspire people. We show enough to give them a real feeling for it. Yeah, but not so much that like you're done. You're like you don't want to hear from me. So I think we walk that tightrope all the time. So I think we'll be able to put that together, and we can keep talking about it as we get closer.
So is it realistic to do it in late February or early March? I mean, I know we keep saying February, but are we when are we gonna be in the best position to pick a date or to have this?
So what's our date for the final deliverable? It's
March 17th, maybe.
And that was so that we left ourselves a little bit of buffer. Do we have to have the final decision plan by then, or?
I think it's, partially for a buffer in case there's any. We know we have to have approval by May, and we didn't want to butt up against it in case there were any delays or modifications or at the last minute. So I think we do have buffer.
I mean, picking a site may be the most difficult challenge, given that they're apples and oranges and none is perfect. I think the question came up, does having a plan to meet the contractual requirements, the grant requirements, suppose 2 sites were up in the air. I mean, does that meet the legal requirements? Certainly one would think the goal of this feasibility study and our involvement is to work with you to make a decision. So maybe we just assume, work towards early February, there's a decision.
And I believe, this is something that we're looking years in the future. So those 2 pieces of property may not be available when we're ready to build or whenever we're ready to buy them. So, yes, we have to have a center that we could move from one property to another. Ideally, those are the places we looked at, but who knows what's going to happen in a year from now or whatever. We have, enough money to buy property or whatever the next step is.
Well, once we complete this step, we do have enough money to buy property.
So it is in fact possible to finish the study and just keep going. Keep going. There are a bunch of steps. So Joan, your scenario is very common, but it's not impossible that things could keep moving forward, but you need the money.
Okay, we have just under 10 minutes, David, to wrap up.
And I'm just going to throw out the question, to what extent to build support and we've talked about this before, do we want people who aren't seniors feel they have a sense of ownership? I'll put ownership in air quotes, but ownership, they're going to pay for it. So I think we should keep that in mind about having a 32-year-old couple say 50 years before I needed, why would I support this? So how in a public meeting are we going to make the case? You may be 32, but your mom is a little bit older and you're going to be in your 50s before you know it.
I think that's where the 3D and different imaging of people seeing the equipment that's in there, and it's not, just for, the high end of seniors. It's also the lower end of senior age where people can start to get in, and they can see what can be offered to them.
So a lot of this, it may be 2/3 pictures and architecture, and then it's 1/3, I'm making this up, the policy from this committee and from the COA saying, yeah, we're going to work hard, and our architects are working hard to make sure this will appeal to you and be fun. So we can work together on this. It's just a reminder to all of us.
Yeah, this is not to plan for today, it's to plan for the next 10, 20 years as well. So, I want the 40 and 50-year-olds to say, wow, that would be a great place to go exercise, to go work out, to go do whatever, to go have a cup of coffee.
Yeah. So with only a few minutes left, can we set dates for our next meetings?
Can we get a date first, for a tentative date for the?
Have your draft one.
Excuse me? For the community? I heard somebody say something. So
are we saying it's not a select board week? When the select board meets on Tuesday night. So it's a Thursday night is what we're thinking about?
I'm going to ask us to pick a tentative date for the public meeting, and then we'll pick a date for the, because we're on the off weeks for the select board, I believe, right now.
We're on March 7th for the select board. But just for the board, just for the department, not for this.
I'm
sure they want to hear about this, but.
What's March 7th?
That's the COA department head annual report.
Yeah. That's not relevant, I don't think, to this. We'll have a lot to report, right, Joan? But we wouldn't have it on a Tuesday anyway. Does anybody have, David, what do you think is realistic? Do we look to February 23rd? Is that realistic?
It's certainly realistic in one respect. The next week, we'll have more information. So it's not as if we can't put something together by February 23rd. It's really about what decisions will or won't have been made and how far we can go following up on those.
Okay, so do we want to postpone that decision on that date until after our next meeting?
Maybe, because then hopefully we'll have information from the engineers that David's going to hire on the soil conditions and whatnot. And hopefully now it's going to be our next meeting that we're going to be talking to the property owners.
If we're talking between Christmas and New Year's, I don't know what property owners, schedules are like at that point in time. So,
so January.
So our next meeting would be, the 29th. But if we're going to look to go a little bit further than that and give David and the engineer some time to gather some additional information.
It'll be a month. It's not going to be the first week of January when we have substantive information. I can push really hard, but it will be later in January. And let me just say, we can work around February 23rd. We can work around whatever date you set up. We're not going to have it be an embarrassment because we didn't have enough time. All I'm just saying is this whole group won't be as far along. And maybe that's appropriate earlier rather than later in the process.
Do we want to meet on the 29th and see if Mr. Labrie and Mr. Gielaher and Coleman Real Estate are available on that date and set it for that at this point? Are people in town? Joan's on vacation, right? So
I'm out of the country. So,
You're hard
but
to plan.
I have a lot of trips coming up. So I'm starting to be retired. So that's the whole point.
Right, we're going to get you on a couple more committees, keep you in town, but yeah, just kidding. So
I'm all in favor of moving to take the next meeting off and restarting January.
But if you want to meet with the landowners, it might be helpful to get them on a call, even if a couple of us aren't there.
Okay.
Just so we get their
yeah,
information.
I mean, it may be a short meeting. It's just maybe a meeting to speak to the landowners because like David said, he's not going to have a lot of feedback back at that point in time. So it could be a short meeting versus a 2-hour meeting. Does that make sense to anybody else?
So you're not talking about moving it to January 5th?
We're talking about keeping it at December 29th. And if we're just going to talk to the landowners, we'd have to do our updates with you and Rini, Joan, about the layout and stuff. Get that feedback back before then, before you leave. The center's closed that week. I understand that. So I don't know. What's anybody else think? Can we get the landowners in on the 29th and just have a short meeting for that?
I'm okay with that.
Does anybody want to make a motion on that? For next scheduled meeting?
I can make a motion to schedule our next meeting and trying to get the landowners for December 29th.
And if for some reason they're not available, then we'll postpone the meeting. I hate to get off this every other week schedule because I know we're kind of on the off week for the select board meetings and Ed has his department head meetings that Thursday morning after select board. So I'd like to keep it on the opposite week if we can do that.
Yeah, this schedule definitely works.
So we'll do the December 29th at noon. If Ed can get a hold of any landowners between now and then. And do you have, the contact for Colebrook Realtor?
I can forward it to you.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say, I don't think I do.
All right. So noon on the 29th, and we'll try to get the landowners in. And then we'll decide on that date, or we'll leave the 23rd open, February 23rd at this point, and see whether we want to do it that week. Doesn't have to be on a Thursday when it's a public meeting. Whatever we pick will be a snowstorm. So advocates can't make it, right?
Don't jinx us.
I just wanted to get it off the table first. Okay, anything else before any other open items? And Joan,
and connecting up with Joan.
Rini and I and the folks from Atticus, Joan, will schedule a meeting and I'll get to everybody after this.
Okay, connect up with this. Okay.
Yep. All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, a second. Okay, thank you. All right, let me just go to a roll call to adjourn. Audrey?
Aye.
Rini?
Aye.
Andrew?
Aye.
Darcy?
Aye.
Libby?
Aye.
Ron?
Aye.
And Janet? Aye. Okay, thank you, everybody. We're 1 minute over, but we tried to keep it to the 2 hours.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.